My name is Marty Bakal. I'm Director of Product Marketing at Labra.io.
Marty Bakal is an experienced product leader who works in product management, product marketing, and field application engineering. Marty understands user needs and how to translate them into products and collaterals. He has the ability to translate technical features into content understood by engineering and users alike, and a thirst for knowledge spanning multiple industries. In this episode, Marty talks about product marketing management, or PMM, and how he collaborates with product managers on inbound and outbound activities. He debunks some of the misconceptions about PMM and highlights the challenges and opportunities in the PM-PMM relationship. This is a short episode, but packed with lots of insights.
Hi everyone, it's Magali. Thank you so much for listening to more and more episodes and sharing the podcast with your network. Listening to this podcast, just like reading a book or going to a conference, is key for your development. If you haven't been to a conference lately, you are missing out on a great opportunity to learn from and network with your peers. I am personally going to the Product-Led Summit in Las Vegas, organized by Product-Led Alliance, and they are offering you 20% off the tickets. So if you're a listener of Product Perspective, you get 20% off to the Product-Led Summit in Las Vegas by using the discount code Product Perspectives. It's Product Perspectives all together. I'm going to put the link in the description, and see you in Vegas.
Welcome to Product Perspectives, the podcast for product people that gives a voice to their stakeholders, hosted by Magali Pellissier. Each weekly episode shows you the other side of the product with interviews of the people who contribute to making products a success. They are engineers, writers, marketers, support analysts, UX designers, or even salespeople. Not only will they get the credit they deserve, but they will share their perspectives on what makes a good product and product manager. Stakeholder management is a key skill for product managers. So just as you're obsessed with listening to your customers, let's hear from your stakeholders.
Thank you very much, Marty, for being with me today.
Thank you.
You first started as a sales engineer, then you became a product manager, and now you work in product marketing. So can you tell me more about your journey?
Sure, I started even earlier in tech support, but I was in sales engineer for a long time, so that's as good a place as any to start. I mean, I enjoyed sales engineering a lot because it was helping customers figure out what problems they had, helping them understand them, getting technical into things, writing adapters, doing a bunch of different things that were pretty cool and fun to do directly with customers. I did that for, like 10 years, but two things happened. Number one, I got a little tired of traveling 2 to 3 weeks per month. That's just a lot of travel. And back then, that's what I did. I taught training classes, I gave demos, everything. But I also wanted to be part of the complete solution, not just my specific set of customer needs. So from PM to me, it seemed really cool because you could think about the whole roadmap. You could think about all the different elements from there. But I also always enjoyed writing. And back then, PM and PMM, two different things. A lot of times the PM did the product marketing actually work. So I was actually doing both a lot of the time when I was a product manager. And I do like the roadmap creation and some of the stuff that product managers do, but I had to give that up as you had to decide which one you were going to do. And in the end, I kind of chose product marketing over the years.
Perfect. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing, because I know lots of people who have moved from product marketing to product management, but not the other way around. How do you think these experiences have made you better at your current role in product marketing?
In product marketing, you really have to know your salespeople and understand what the salespeople's needs are. Being in sales and having gone on sales calls for years helps me understand the needs of the salespeople themselves. And so that's a big thing as part of the whole process. I mean, you work closely with product management. You have to understand the pains that they have working with the dev team, understand the delays that are going to happen, and why products turn out differently than the roadmap sometimes claim, no matter what you do. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on there. I work with them every day, and you really have to understand all those. Plus, when you're thinking about things like MRDs, marketing release documents, how would they create a PRD from that? And so that's another whole question you have to think about.
It is music to my ear when someone who works in the product space says that they've got empathy for product managers and they understand a bit what we're doing. So I think this is great. What you've touched on a bit is the things that you have to give up in product management to focus on the product marketing role. But what are the things that you like the most in product marketing that you didn't have in sales engineering or in product management?
So product marketing, it's fun because you get to promote the product, you get to talk about cool things, you get to work really closely with marketing, you get to think through campaigns. A lot of times you do go to conferences, which you might do as a product manager as well. It all depends upon the product and the different elements. Traditionally, most of my customers, it's a little less in this job, but most of my customers have been very technical. So I've still stayed very technical, having to talk about coding, because there were code generators, there were things like that. But it's really understanding how the customers think and getting a better idea of their domain expertise is what product marketers really have to do, even more so than product managers. I'm not saying product managers need to understand and be the voice of the customer for the dev team, but we're really it for the customers and to some extent, which is a lot of fun. And I like writing. I like the whole creative aspect of marketing. So that's kind of fun for me too.
You've talked about the fact that you were still technical because you worked on technical products. You have that background, but as sales engineer, so it's quite technical. And I think sometimes there is, at least that's the misconception I may have at times, which is that product marketing isn't always technical. What do you think from your perspective is a misconception about product marketing that people have and you fundamentally disagree with?
Well, you actually just hit on the biggest one, the technical part. But I will say this, in a lot of roles, product marketing isn't technical because if you're end customers, if you're in a B2C world and you're dealing with consumers, your job is to understand the consumer. If you're building an app for a phone, things like that, why should you be technical? Your job is to be sort of that customer and write about the customer needs. But when it's a technical tool that you're dealing with, when it's B2B, has complex interactions between them, then you really do have to be technical. And you really do have to understand it. The other part that being technical gives me, again, is that better relationship with product managers because, they're the ones in scrums. They're the ones regularly in those meetings. I've done that. I understand that that's part of their problem. And so that's a whole different thing.
Right. And you've touched on the difference between B2B and B2C product marketing. Is there a difference between product marketing in a small company and in a big company?
There definitely is a difference between product marketing in a small company and a big company. I mean, number one, is all the problems that in small companies like the one I'm in now, you have to take on many hats in order to do anything. You might be doing more other marketing stuff, things like that. But the other thing I'd say is this, many times in large companies, product marketing manager might have multiple products they're dealing with because, it's just the nature of it. A lot of times we work one product marketer to 3 to 5 product managers. And if each one of those product managers is a different product, that's just how it works. So there's a lot of things you have to think about when you're talking about that. And also, sometimes you have different level product marketers. Sometimes some are doing the MRDs and working on the inbound, and some are mostly focused on outbound. And obviously, there's different levels between them. Whereas in a small company, usually you're doing a lot of stuff by yourself on all the different product marketing roles.
That's definitely something I've seen. And one of the things you said earlier, which is sometimes there's not even a product marketing person in small companies. So the product manager and the person in marketing do this and they overlap a lot. You've also worked in a variety of industries. So is there a difference again between product marketing in one industry versus another?
Well, I hit on some of that. I mean, it depends how technical you need to be and who your customers are. I'd say is the biggest thing because you're always thinking about the personas of customers. When I've dealt with defense systems and things like that, sometimes you're dealing a lot more with regulatory and a lot of other needs. So it's really the industry sort of mimicking the pains that the customers feel in those specific industries. We also already touched on sort of B2B and B2C, right? B2C, you're not trying to think about an individual customer. You're doing a lot more feedback through the tool because you might get thousands of users playing with the tool. In B2B, many times you don't get enough to actually do that feedback directly in it to see how campaigns are working, how everything's working. You have to do more qualitative. You have to talk to them. You have to see what's going on. I've always been in B2B, but I'm saying those are kind of the differences between industries and between domains, I guess I'll say.
Right. And There is something I want to go back to, which you mentioned earlier, which is a marketing release document. And I have to be honest, the first time you mentioned that to me, I had never heard of this document before. So can you please clarify what is it and how does it relate to a product requirement document?
Sure. And a lot of product marketers don't do marketing release documents, but the idea of the marketing release document is to understand the industry, understand specifically the personas, and understand the encompassing part of that, of how the whole product would be brought in by the industry, because product marketers are supposed to be the experts in the industry. Product release documents really are focused typically on sometimes a full product, sometimes just an epic, and they're mostly the stuff you need to build. What do you want to build? Because then you break those up into epics and stories and all those types of elements. Yes, they bring in that other stuff, but they're not completely focused externally on what the customers need. They're also focused on what their developers actually are going to have to build and how that works. So I'd say that you should do the market release document first and then let that feed into maybe multiple product release documents, PRDs, inside your system. Sometimes that doesn't happen, or sometimes we're doing a major feature, you all of a sudden say, let's do a market analysis of this feature. Let's see where the pain points are. By the way, when I do marketing release documents, I do them with the product managers. It's not like we do it in a vacuum.
That's very interesting. And obviously, the more we can collaborate with product marketing as product managers, the better, I think. So it looks like a great way to do this earlier, as opposed to product marketing only being told at the end when the product is almost ready to release. Oh, by the way, product marketing, here's what we're going to release. So it looks like a great way to do all that work and that collaboration beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, and each company will split it up differently, but I think that you should be collaborating on these pain points. I mean, in many cases, that's actually what growth marketing, when we talk about that, is all about, right? Is getting product with the growth team to develop little features that you say should work and testing them feedback. And this is sort of the same thing, except it's usually not. In B2B world, it's hard to do that growth stuff because you don't get enough feedback quickly enough to make it work. So in some ways, this is using people who talk to those customers who are testing the messaging and campaigns to say, hey, help me come up with this analysis or lead the analysis up front.
And we're going to dig deeper into that overlap between product marketing and product management, because you've created a mind map with Growth Product about the synergies between PM and PMM. So can you explain the most important ones that you see?
Sure. There's a few different things I think about there. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stuff all around the roadmap. Product management owns the roadmap. Product marketing's job is to know the roadmap so they're ready to think about what campaigns you want to run, what content you want to create. There's that whole outbound piece of it. And you work very closely on those. But there's also the inbound piece. We discussed MRDs and PRDs working closely together. That's another part of it. And also, to be honest, product managers are always desperate for what do the customers actually think of the product, and even what's the industry saying. Well, you can use your product marketers to actually help you understand that. And also we collaborate on things like talking to customers, prospects, analysts, other groups, because it takes a collaboration to make that all work. I mean, analysts is a great example. We used to always bring product managers to the analyst meetings when there was something specific, but sometimes we'd lead it overall, the general needs of talking to analysts.
Okay, so we can definitely collaborate on those topics. I would love some help with my competitive analysis and the view of the industry. That's definitely something I would love to work with product marketing more. But sometimes there's a risk that we can step on each other's toes as a result if the boundaries are not really clear. So how can we prevent this from happening? Have you had that challenge before?
I mean, you always have some challenges like that, but keeping communication, having biweekly calls where you discuss what you're doing, and you be open and honest about those things. And so sometimes we say, okay, this competitor's won. I'll do the website work to look through their website, understand the problems as the product marketing person. You can see if someone in the engineering team, whoever, can maybe test their product if that's something you want to do. Then we'll see what data we come up with and we'll work together on it. It's all a matter of talking about the collaboration. And yes, knowing who lead which particular activity is important, but that can be very variable, and just be open and be talking to them. I've never really had a major problem because I've always set up those regular calls with them, aligned with them, and had those discussions.
Okay, so that's one challenge, and you said you haven't really faced it often, but is there another challenge that you see regularly, or you have witnessed, or you've heard of, or your team has experienced with working with product management?
I mean, there's always challenges. I guess if you get a product manager who just says, these are the features that are coming out, and they don't really tell you what's coming further into them and how that's all working. I've seen that happen many times. And that's always frustrating if they don't give us enough lead time on a feature and they say, okay, this is going to be released this week. And oh, by the way, there are all these changes to the thing that we said was going to happen earlier. Sometimes that's unavoidable, but having that conversation as early as possible helps because we're working on content. Our content takes a while to build. And if that happens, all that's going to happen is we're just going to have to say, okay, it's going to be another, you're announcing the release today. Great. We're not going to do anything for another month. And that doesn't help anyone. Those are probably the biggest ones. Last one I'll put in is when there isn't a real roadmap because customers ask to see the roadmap. Analysts ask to see the roadmap. And with Agile, I'm an Agile fan. Don't get me wrong. But with Agile, people seem to think, oh, we can't have a roadmap because we're only planning 2 weeks in advance. No, you have a backlog. You know what the roadmap is. Come on, give it to us. You can say subject to change. That's fine. I'm fine with that. But do it that way.
That's a great point. So if people who are listening to this episode, they obviously want to learn more about product marketing, is there a book or a resource for product managers who want to understand better your fields?
Well, I mean, there is the Product Marketing Alliance group. They have a Slack channel that you could go on, which is a bit busier. They also, by the way, run a product-led growth one, where some product marketers join and discuss. As far as books, one I haven't read yet, but I keep hearing good things about myself, is called Obviously Awesome by April Dunford. And that one's really about how to nail product positioning. And I think it's actually good. Based upon what I've skimmed it so far, I think it's a good thing for both to read, really. But it's specifically targeted at product marketers.
So the world is changing. Technology is moving faster than ever. There is now AI and it's becoming more mainstream. There's virtual reality, Web3. How do you think that will impact your role as product marketing person?
AI is the biggest one we're seeing already because people can write content with AI directly. You've seen that with ChatGPT and things like that. I don't think it's necessarily the best content yet, but it's improving quickly as more data sets come in. So for us, what we have to learn is how to, maybe sometimes you will let it generate stuff. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that in this role or not. We'll figure out, and then maybe you clean it up because it's never going to be targeted enough, everything you want. But if it helps speed up my job, great. Now, if we talk about AR and all the other stuff, virtual reality, I mean, that's just another way to reach customers, in my mind, primarily in a way to encompass them in what you're doing. Does it make sense in all industries? Not necessarily, at least not yet. We'll see. It's definitely, I mean, if you're in the gaming industry, it's obvious. You're going to build games that do that. If you're in a lot of other markets, it just depends.
Perfect. And I believe you've got a question related to that collaboration with product management as well for me.
Sure. As a PM, what do you get out of the PMM relationship?
I want to say the minimum I want to get is help me with the release material, everything that is customer facing, because as you say, given that you work a lot with marketing, you've got that creative skills, you love writing. So that's the very minimum. But I think if I do this, that's really underutilizing this relationship. There's so much more you can bring to the table. So around competitor analysis, looking at the trends in the market, understanding better our customers and the industry, because my time, like everybody else's time, is very scarce as a product manager, right? So if we can bring our two perspectives together, I think that often leads to the best results. So let's move on to the final part of this interview, which is fire questions. So I'm going to make several propositions and you choose one of them. And if you want to elaborate, you can. So the first one is remote or in person?
Personally, I prefer hybrid, but I mean, I've been doing remote for the last number of years. I haven't had a problem with it.
Webinar or newsletter?
Webinar. I like to interact with people.
That's interesting because a lot of webinars are mostly broadcasting and there's a small Q&A session at the end, but you're right. There's at least tiny.
But I'm also thinking of a webinar, but I'm also thinking that sometimes webinars have couple people talking. Whereas newsletter is very blah.
Right. And what about launches and releases? Every week, every month, or every quarter?
I mean, I don't mind releases as quickly as possible. I think the release planning can only be periodically, month, quarter type of time frame. Majors can only be quarterly because people can't consume much more than that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. So as a final piece of advice to wrap this conversation.
I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. Product marketing is also very busy. You can offer to write blogs because you're an expert in your product and you can help explain it. You can create product videos. the demos and things like that we use on the website. Many product managers already do that. It helps. You can help with the product sheets, the data sheets, competitive analysis. All this stuff is all stuff that product managers sometimes do, but in many cases, if they have product marketing, they sort of say, all right, that's product marketing's job, and I'll stay away from doing any of these things. So that's how you can up your game in product marketing. A lot of it's about the outbound, because that's the stuff you're not necessarily doing today when there's a split.
Thank you very much. I like those episodes because I think they're short and sweet and to the point, and you've managed to cram so many tips and so much information, so much value. So thank you very much for sharing with me and the listeners your experience as a product marketing manager.
No problem. Thank you for having me. It's been fun, and I guess I'll wait to see the result.
Thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. If you have suggestions for topics and guests, or any feedback, you can write to Magali Pellissier at hotmail.fr.